David Avella, GOPAC chairman, Mark Penn, a former Clinton advisor. Mark, I'm going to start with you on just how thin the response was on exactly what could be done on the economy. Why you think that is? And by the way, if you checked out the website, that doesn't have the answer either.
Well, look, I think it's very clear. If you're an abortion voter, you know who you're voting for. It's Harris. If you're an immigration first voter, you know who you're voting for there. It's Trump. If you're an economy voter, I think that's where the undecideds are sitting. And they're waiting to see, well, does Harris have any plan or experience for the economy? And they're sitting there and they say, I know, I may not like Trump, but the economy was better under him. And that's why they're sitting there as an undecided voter. So that's why this is so important. And that's why the debate was so unsatisfying, because it was like a couple of minutes out of 90 minutes with no real specifics about the economy, when they know that Harris has no direct experience in the economy in her entire life.
Well, and the public also knows how they feel right now. And she and her boss have been in office for 3.5 years. So Trump asked the right question. What are you going to do differently? I'm curious, yes or no, real quick, and we'll move on. Have you ever seen an election where people who were interested in other things like abortion outweighed the number of people who were interested in the economy? Mark?
No. Well, this is
okay.
Look, about 2/3 of the people are unhappy with the economy, right, and 48% say that their personal life is worse.
Okay, despite overall inflation slowing down, new numbers now show how much people are suffering under very high prices. On essential things, you know, everybody needs food. You got to have shelter. And then along with that, if you're driving to get to anywhere for work or wherever you're going, you're going to need auto insurance. And if it's hot or cold where you live, you're going to need energy. All are up by double digits since Biden took office. So this is the Biden-Harris administration handing us these things right before an election. David.
In 3.5 years, Harris, the vice president has not been able to convince Americans that Bidenomics is a good thing, that it will ultimately help us move forward. And what she is offering, and she talks about her value set, what she's offering is more of the same, more higher taxes, more regulations, more things that make us less a free market capitalistic society, and more redistribution of wealth. And let's put that in real terms. I will not win as many races probably in my career as Mark Penn. That said, under her system, we should get paid the same. There should be fairness. And if I can't make as much as Mark, despite the fact that he wins more races, we should just redistribute what he makes and give it to me. Now, that would be advantageous for us. I could be maybe persuaded that she has a good idea. But for most Americans, that's not going to sell. They want their hard-earned efforts to be rewarded. They don't believe there is a pie that has to be distributed. They know the U.S. economy can grow. It has our entire history. And not once in the history of the world has the Marxist socialistic approach of redistribution that she is advocating has ever worked.
Wow. All right. Well, Mark, I guess you're going to be giving away some free income according to that. Good luck with that, Mark. All right. So this is another big question for the hour. Will we see another debate? The day after the first one, both sides were showing major politeness just hours after that heated contest. Former President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris shook hands again at a 9/11 remembrance ceremony in New York. President Biden even wore a Trump hat. The White House called it a display of unity. Both sides weighed in on whether he or whether we will see another head-to-head.
Would you still do the one on NBC on September 25th? You proposed that. Are you still committed to that?
I would do NBC. I'd do Fox too. I'd do Fox too. But right now we have to determine whether or not we even want to do it.
I think the American people would like to hear more from both of them about what will you do to make us safer and stronger at home and abroad. And I think she should accept an invitation from Fox to come on and debate President Trump.
Well, we appreciate that and agree. A big focus, the first debate, was the fact-checking both live and after the fact that we had our eye on. We know the moderators pushed back on former President Trump 5 times and on Vice President Kamala Harris 0 times. We fact-checked her, but they didn't. Time magazine was also forced to take back a so-called fact check of its own. That media outlet claimed Trump's point that Kamala Harris supported transgender surgeries for illegal immigrants in prison was false. The vice president did, in fact, check yes in support on a survey she filled out during her 2019 presidential run, saying that she would do that. Now, remember, these are people who've been detained, deemed for many reasons, maybe even some of them dangerous, can't walk about the country. You're here illegally. Should we give them gender surgeries, gender transforming surgeries, elective surgery on our dime was the question. She said yes. Both candidates are both back on the campaign trail today in battleground states. Kamala Harris in North Carolina, Donald Trump in Arizona. David, I'll reverse order now and just get any kind of reaction to any of that you want. There's a lot of meat on the bone there.
We should have another debate. As you have pointed out on more than one occasion, it was after the 2016, all three debates, quite frankly, that Hillary Clinton was deemed the winner. It ultimately didn't tell us who was going to win the 2016 election. But here's why it's important, particularly for, I would offer, Donald Trump. Because every time, every question he gets, he should give his position on the issue that's asked and then remind voters that Vice President Kamala Harris has been by Joe Biden's side every day during 3.5 years. And what she is offering is what he has offered. And if you want more of Joe Biden's policies, vote Harris.
Well, she hasn't been defending them as of late and is distancing herself from them, Kamala Harris versus Joe Biden. So there's that point. And your reaction to any of that, Mark?
My reaction is I'm really concerned about what ABC did. When the refs put their finger on the scale, you got to throw out the score of the game. What would have happened in that debate had they challenged Harris and said, you know, that's not right, what you said there about Charlottesville.
Right.
We don't know how she would have reacted, and then Trump wouldn't have to spend all his time on the defense end. I think they did a real disservice to the voters of America when they did that, and they put in jeopardy the institutions of debate.
Well, and look, for the candidate on your side of the political aisle, it might have helped her. You know, I mean, if you want to get sharp, you have to rub up against something that will sharpen you. And it might have even helped her quiet down those in your party who still have so many questions about her policies. Great to see you both, gentlemen. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.